Hello and welcome to Minerals, Rocks, and Fossil Talks. I'm your geology teacher, Jen, and it's time for some Throwback Thursday. Let's learn about the father of glaciology, since we're learning so much this month about fathers of the sciences in geology. Meet Louis Agassiz. He was a Swiss biologist and geologist in the 19th century, and I gotta say, this has gotta be the most smiley picture I've ever seen from this era. His biggest claim to fame was that he was the first to propose a global ice age. He presented his idea that glaciers in the Alps had once been larger and had covered not only the mountains, but the plains of Europe, Asia, and North America as well in 1837, after he'd done a bunch of research. And then, along with William Buckland, who is a little more famous for Megalosaurus, helped him search the British Isles for evidence, and they came back pretty satisfied with what they found. So what kind of evidence is out there that they could have found to show that glaciers had once covered the northern hemisphere? Well, glaciers leave really big marks on the surface of the Earth, and I'm going to show you some of them. Alright, so first off, here is a photograph I took this last December in eastern Oregon in the Wallowa Mountains. This is Wallowa Lake, and this hill that you're seeing right here is something called a moraine. And that is all the debris that was pushed to the side by a glacier as it came through the area. So that is all just dirt and rocks and things that got shoved out of the way as the ice made its way down there. And you can continue on till the end. So this is a lateral moraine, so the one on the side. And then if you continue this direction, I guess towards me more, there would be a terminal moraine where the glacier ended before it started retreating. So we drove right along that. You can see those trees are not very big compared to that hill. It's a very big hill. Then you can have a horn, which is a pyramidal peak created by glaciers on all sides. This photo I took in Big Cottonwood Canyon in the Wasatch Range. And if you're thinking of something more dramatic, here is another one that I took in Wyoming while we were driving on the Beartooth Highway. So, they come in all shapes and sizes. Then there are cirques, which is a bowl-shaped depression, which makes sense because cirque means circle in French. And it's where mountain glaciers would have started forming initially, and then they would go down the mountain. So, you can see a pretty shallow depression up here. It's probably not as shallow as we think it is, because I took this from the Jordan River, looking up at the Wasatch Range, so I was not very close to this mountain at all. But you can see there's kind of this bowl-shaped depression where my head is right now. And then all of this is a valley that was carved out as the glacier was heading out of the cirque. Which leads to another very obvious shape you will see, U-shaped valleys. When you go up into the mountains, most of the time you're going to see the V shape because that is the shape that rivers carve as they're going through. But when you have ice, it makes more of a U shape. You've got sharp, straight edges and then this bowl as it cuts through. This is a photograph I took from Blackmore Peak in the Gallatin Range in Montana, looking down the valley that was carved out by a glacier on its way down to the Highlight Reservoir from Blackmore Peak. In fact, as you go down that valley, you'll even find a few kettle ponds, which is another thing we'll talk about. But you can see, and it's a little easier to see as you go further down to the back, so just over my head, you can see that very distinctive U shape. This is a photo I took of the Absaroka Range as I flew over it on my way to visit some family. You can see that distinctive bowl shape again here. This is a cirque that kind of drops down over the edge, but particularly I want you to look at this ridge right here. That's an arête. Arrête means literally stop in French. And an arête is a sharp ridge that was created by ice passing on both sides. So you can tell looks like there's two slide-like features. For whatever reason, the ice just decided to go around that one section and left this nice ridge there. You can also see bigger ridges in like Glacier National Park. When you're on the east side, there's a pretty impressive arête over there as you're heading up the Going to the Sun Road. And I have pictures from Glacier somewhere. I just can't find them right now, so maybe you'll see them later. Here's another picture I took from that flight. This is a tarn lake. So a tarn lake is water that fills a cirque. Obviously, this was carved out, but didn't get very far. It doesn't look like there's much of a valley that comes out of there, so it basically was a bowl filled with ice, and then it melted and left a tarn lake. But you'll find tarn lakes all over in cirques, just all over the place. And sometimes there's campgrounds around them, like Fairy Lake, which is technically a tarn lake that's not in the main cirque, but right below it, but kind of the same idea. And then I mentioned earlier, not only do you get tarn lakes, but you can get kettle ponds, like these, that I also took from that flight. Kettle ponds are ponds left behind from melting glaciers, and they usually make a little trail. You can see pockets filled with water as wherever the glacier had gone. Here's one on a slightly smaller scale. This is from the top of the Beartooth Plateau, but you can see all the little kettle ponds peppering its way down until you get to the cliff where everything dropped down into the valley. Then you can get proglacial lakes. This is a lake caused by damming of a moraine or ice sheet. This is Jenny Lake in Grand Teton National Park, and it is a proglacial lake. Another one that doesn't exist anymore, but is pretty famous, is Lake Missoula. Glacial Lake Missoula was a proglacial lake. It was created by the damming of ice, with ice. And then the ice melted and flooded Idaho and Washington. Whoops. But some proglacial lakes still exist because moraines don't just melt away. And you can see the moraine. That's the terminal moraine, I believe, from where I'm looking, right above my head here. Doesn't look terribly tall from over here, but I'm also on a boat on the other side of the lake, so perception. You can also get really big hills called drumlins, which are deposited on the bottom of the glacier. I couldn't find the pictures I had taken from when I went up to Glacier National Park. Outside of Glacier, on the west side, you have this huge place where the Continental Glacier was, heading south over by Eureka, Montana, which has a bunch of these drumlins. And people were building, like, their homes on top of these things. Like, drumlins are huge, guys. Huge. And then another one, the last one I'm going to talk about today, are striations, which are gouges left in rock by the passing glacier. Ice is a rock, and if it's heavy enough, it can leave a pretty decent mark in rocks, and they'll be going all the same direction, so don't confuse them with, like, the cracks that make, like, the checkerboard patterns and everything. That's a weathering thing, not a glacial thing. So if you see a bunch of lines like this that are going in the same direction, it might be because of a glacier. Now, there's so many other glacial things I could talk about right now, but I don't have the time to for this particular video. So if you want to learn more about things that glaciers left behind, let me know in the comments, and I will just go ahead and make another video about them, maybe go into some more detail about ones that I've even mentioned now. And keep a lookout, because they're everywhere. Once you start to see the remnants of glaciers, you never stop seeing them, just like Agassiz. Now, you can tune in tomorrow to learn about an extinct group of Ordovician fishes, and until then, fossilize you later.